Welcome, everybody. I'd like to introduce now President and Vice Chancellor of Toronto Metropolitan University, Mohamed Leshmi.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Democracy Forum. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land we are on. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans and all newcomers, have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Democracy Forum is hosted by the DAIS, a public policy and leadership think tank at Toronto Metropolitan University. The forum engages political leaders about the most pressing issues facing Canadians. Past speakers included Prime Minister, premiers, leaders of national and provincial parties. Today, I am very pleased to welcome Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow back to our campus. The mayor knows very well our university, and we are extremely happy to have her back to her TMU community. She has been a key part of a number of important initiatives here over a number of years. As the mayor knows, TMU is a city builder. Central to our vision is advancing dialogue and action around safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable cities. We are committed to sharing our expertise in areas such as migration, housing, smart infrastructure, and land use. We are willing and ready to do more, and I think we have the right partner in City Hall, and I look forward to today's conversation. Our host is Martin Cohn, a political columnist for the Toronto Star and founder of the Democracy Forum. He is a senior fellow at the DAIS here at TMU, a foreign correspondent for 11 years. He was also foreign editor and parliamentary correspondent for the Toronto Star. Martin, over to you.
Shukran, Mohamed. I abandoned you because I have a lot to say about you before we begin. Thank you. Bienvenue, bonjour. Welcome to our 29th Democracy Forum at TMU, where we try to do democracy differently and more democratically. If you're watching live on thestar.com or on the CPAC television network across Canada, thanks for joining us. It's been just over 100 days since our guest started her new job, but many of us here think of her still at her old job here on campus. So let me tell you about her many jobs and her journeys. Olivia Chow was elected mayor of Toronto just last June and took office in mid-July, the first racialized person to run City Hall in our history. It was a return to her political roots because she served 6 terms as a Metro Toronto councillor, and before that as a school trustee, and after that as the Member of Parliament for Trinity Spadina. Now, not many people know that before she was a politician, she was a sculptor, shaping ideas. Later, she found her calling as a teacher, our good fortune, but she was always a political activist and community organizer, which is how she ended up here at Toronto Met as a distinguished visiting professor, fancy title, but she founded the Institute for Change Leaders, and now she's putting theory into practice again. In her student days, she studied religion and philosophy at U of T. She also studied fine art at OCAD, and her BA is from Guelph. And before that, she was born in Hong Kong, just like one of my daughters, and came to Canada as a teenager. And she is one of our immigrant success stories, but she will tell you, if you know her story, that it was not without hardship. That's a lot of journeys, but welcome back home to Toronto Metropolitan University. I always talk about the education of our guests as I did just now. I'm going to tell you where I studied. I went to King's College at Dalhousie in Halifax, and you're asking, why are you telling me that? It's because a classmate of mine is in the front row, the former NDP Premier of Nova Scotia, Darrell Dexter.
Woohoo!
I didn't want to interrupt Olivia's introduction, so I had to make you wait. And beside him is Peggy Nash, also a practitioner at TMU and the former MP from Hyde Park. Parkdale, Hyde Park. Let's not forget Parkdale. Okay. Before I kick it off with a few questions and then turn it over to you, a little bit of housekeeping, I always remind people that this is a democracy forum. It's not a news conference. It's not a confrontation. We try to dig a little deeper and look for more in-depth answers where possible. And we don't interrupt and we don't disrupt. That's what everyone in this room signed up for when you registered for this event. Now, as the mayor knows from her own recent experience, many Torontonians have heavy hearts about what's happening in the Middle East right now. And the subject will surely come up today, but this is not a seminar on the Middle East or a public protest. As Mohammed mentioned, I spent 4 years covering the conflict in Gaza and Israel, and the bloodshed never stopped. But today is about municipal democracy for the 3 million people of our city. So start thinking up your questions, and roughly at the halfway point, I'll turn it over to you. There are mic runners, so there's no need to line up. Don't take the mic from the mic runner. They'll hold on to it. I already have hundreds of questions that were submitted, hundreds, so you're not leaving for a while now, which were submitted by you when you registered online, and they were inspiration for me as I tried to summarize the questions. When we're all done, I will, however, hand them off to you, and we'll be waiting for your responses over the next few years. Okay. First question. The last time I moderated you at a democracy event, we called you Olivia. What do we call you now? Do we call you Madam Mayor, Your Worship, Professor Chow, or Olivia? What are you good with?
Olivia is
Okay.
good.
I thought I knew the answer to that one, but I just thought I would clarify that. Now, the last time I saw you at the Toronto Star newsroom during the campaign, you came on your bike.
Yep.
And your team told me that there was traffic today, so I assume you weren't able to zip through. But when I saw you last month, you said that your Toronto Police bodyguards, protective service, were having trouble keeping up with you on the bike. Are you having to slow down for them now, or how's it going?
We're working on it.
Okay, all right. And the other thing that she said was slowing her down, this is not a hint, just letting you know in advance, was selfies. And she said it's really hard to get from A to B. So, still a problem?
I've gotten really fast at taking it. Bang, done. You know, speaking of which, you know what? Hang on. Hi. Oh, whoa. Done. Thank you.
That might be a preemptive strike to say no more selfies, but I can tell you that you and I both know that eventually the selfies slow down as the political honeymoon wears off, because they're never forever, the honeymoons, but enjoy it.
Well, some weddings, you know, some marriage, the honeymoon goes on.
Yes, but politics is another life lesson. Okay, let's get serious. What I really hope to learn from today, and I think many of the students here, is how do you do democracy? The title of today's event is Winning an Election, Governing a City. Before we get to the hard stuff about governing, what lessons did you learn, or give us the top lesson that you learned from winning this election?
When I lost in 2014, I ran before.
I know.
A wonderful friend who I met when Darrell Dexter was the Premier of Nova Scotia. There was a big conference there in Halifax. There was a keynote speaker called Marshall Gans, who was a professor at Harvard. And he said, Olivia, the best way to learn is through failure. I said, pardon me, I just lost the election. What do I mean? There's lots to learn. Come down, we'll teach you a few things. And I know Karim also was part of Marshall Gans' student alumni. So I went and learned. You know what I learned? I learned about how winning the argument which is what we often want to do,
Yep.
is not the be-all, end-all. We say winning the hearts and minds of people. So winning the minds is not enough. You need to win the hearts. How do you win the hearts? Is by connecting, by telling your own story. And the story, what is the story of all the TMU students here? See, I'm old. TMU, okay. What is the story that brings us together? What is the core value that connects us? And how do I fit into that? So we share the same value. And what action we need to take. Myself, all of us together, and action now. I learned that public narrative lesson and applied it to the election. And lo and behold, I was able to win.
It's funny that you mentioned I was going to ask you next about losing. My question was about winning, and you talked about losing, and so you anticipated me, because maybe that's the answer. But let's talk about, and it's one of the things I admire about politicians, is they're ready to risk everything to lose. Not everyone's willing to do that. And you've lost a few elections. You lost the mayor election, you lost, I think, 1 or 2 running for Parliament.
Parliament.
Yeah.
Two times.
And look at you now. So there is method to the madness. I want to talk about Doug Ford, who also lost that election, that same election, to John Tory in 2014.
Yep.
Now he's the premier.
Yep.
Let's talk about Doug Ford and how he talked about you then and even more recently. A few quotes. If Olivia Chow gets in, it will be an unmitigated disaster. You've heard this. Toronto will be toast if Olivia Chow becomes the lefty mayor. So pretty strong language in public. But to your point that you mentioned that you slipped in earlier, strong language in public, very personal. What's he like in private with you?
Unmitigated disaster. I had to look that up.
Mitigated, okay.
There's nothing you can mitigate that disaster. Wow. Back to Gann's teaching. That when you connect with my story and the story of all of us, or with you, my story and your story, there is something that connects us, no matter who we are as human beings. This is what humanity is about. And the hard part is finding out what is that core value that connects us. And it's the power of empathy. Okay? Often people see power as might, money, position, but a lot of the Gann's teaching is the power of empathy. Can I understand your pain, your joy? Can I understand where you're coming from? And when you have that empathy, then you then have the power to connect.
How do you do that with Doug Ford?
Well, he lost a loved one, his brother. I lost a loved one, my late husband. Okay, so we both have gone through city council at different times. I was a city councilor, he was a city councilor. My late husband was a city councilor.
At the same time?
Rob Ford was a city councilor. They were sitting beside each other.
Yes.
Okay, so how is it that we can connect based on that experience of being city councilor? And how do we connect as someone that have grieved a loss? And that piece is so important because at the end of the day, we're human beings, right? And this is what winning the hearts and minds. And if I just go and debate ideological point of view, we're very different. That's not going to get very far. We will not win the argument. I will not win the argument. He won't be able to win his argument because we are very different in opinions. But if we could turn the opinions into an experience, what he experienced, what I experienced, okay, we both experienced traffic jams. We need to do something, okay? His solutions might be slightly different than
Yes.
mine, but if I say that, well, we both agree that we need better TTC service, right, Premier? Well, he's going to say, yeah, we need better public transit. Okay, how do we get there? So you find that common ground based on a value that we could connect through a core experience.
When you met him, I watched you at Queen's Park about a month ago, and you surprised people by coming, you really surprised a lot of people, but not yourselves, with an agreement to revisit the way the city and the province flow the cash, for want of a better word. Now, that was, you agreed to have your people and his people work on it, and your first tentative report is due end of this month, any day now, and then the final report at the end of November. So you found the common ground, you had the empathy, and you said he almost brought you to tears, in fact, at that event. You had to fight back tears because of the photograph that he said shared with you, ambushed you with that photo of Jack Layton, the statue.
And Rob
memorial.
Ford.
And Rob Ford. So tell us what you are going to agree to with him. We're all listening.
You know it's confidential discussion.
Hey, but we won't tell anybody. Chatham House rules.
I see someone recording. I'm just kidding. Good things takes time, so wait for it. We'll have something. But the city's challenge is well known. We have a bare minimum of 1.5 billion, that's 9 zeros, of budget deficit. Because during COVID time, we had to keep running the public transit. Well, the people weren't there, but there were some emergency workers, essential workers, that sell groceries and go to, the nurses. They have to get to work, so we have to run public transit. But because there's not a lot of transit riders and all our money comes from the fare box, and then if there's not enough fares going in, we run a big deficit.
Okay, you know that, and I know that, and a lot of Torontonians know that. How did you persuade Doug Ford of that? And I think you had a meeting before that public meeting, you met him privately. Where did you meet him? What did you do?
Well, I don't want to break confidentiality.
Again?
Let's say that I listed the problem. And the other thing that we did was we didn't just say, here's the problem. We also said that here are some solutions that's possible, okay? And we didn't come up with a solution. We hired a company, Ernst & Young, EY, to have a whole list of options to say, okay, Mr. Premier, if you don't, I call it the salad bar approach. Some people like lettuce, other people like spinach, other people like corn, peas, whatever you want. Here are the choices that could help solve the problem. And may I come back to Marshall Ganz again?
Yes.
Sorry to do that. Because apparently 3 times, by the 3rd time people remember. So this is the 3rd time. Part of the narrative teaching is that myself and people around us, where's the common ground, share values. And there's one element, where can we find hope? If you don't have that, why make change? So where can we find hope is often missing in a lot of stories that we tell. We get depressed about all the problems. But if we just keep painting the nightmares of $1.5 billion and people can't afford housing and homeless, we all know all that problem. People can't find shelters and people have to move out and all of the problem, huge food bank users and okay, that's really depressing. If we don't do anything, that's the depressing nightmare. But we also need to paint a picture of what we can be. What can Toronto be? Can Toronto be a global beacon of hope? We already are. That's why the immigrants come to Toronto. How do we make it even better for newcomers? How do we make it better for young people? How do we have a place where people don't have to sleep in tents, where they can afford a home, where TTC are not so run down, where it's reliable, fast, and that we could actually use our cell phone in the beginning doing that. So we
All
need
the way to Bloor, yes.
almost, yeah, I know. So we have to imagine it, paint that picture, remain hopeful, and that's what I'm trying to do in these discussions. And how are we going to land? I don't know. Is it going to be perfect? I doubt it. Would it be a step forward? Probably. What it looks like, I don't know yet. And
But
hopefully
if
we'll
you
get
wanted to
there.
send a message to the Premier through this forum, upload the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway, would that be a gift that that would make your day and give you hope, to use your word?
Yes, there are more. Do you want me to keep going?
What else have you got?
Wow.
Not what you want.
Okay, how much time do we have?
2
All
hours.
right.
We have 2 hours.
You're 2 hours. Okay, Gardner and DVP.
No, I meant, what are you getting? Not what are you asking for?
Oh.
Have you got it? The upload.
Oh, not what I'm asking for. I don't know what I'm getting.
Okay.
Does any of you know the minds of Premier Ford? Raise your hand. Okay, no one knows what he's thinking
No one
about.
raised their
Neither
hand.
do I.
No one
I
raised their
don't
hand.
know. But if you do know, let me know, all right? If you know what's the best way to approach, let me know. Love to know.
We talked about that a few months ago, though. I guess one of the questions I'm intrigued by is, are your supporters and students surprised when they hear that you can have common ground with Doug Ford? And not just Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, former Stephen Harper cabinet minister, you and he found common ground on the Chinese head tax apology, restitution. So I get that you get the empathy and the common ground. Do you sometimes have to explain to your supporters that actually Doug Ford and I can do business together?
Well, if the goal is clear, and my goal is always clear, making life affordable, build more housing, reliable public transit. If
I've
you
heard
can-
him say those things.
You've heard me say
heard him say
15,000 things. You heard him say the same thing. Right, of course. If our goal is clear, and yesterday we just provided a big roadmap naming 57 sites we can build housing. So you have the roadmap. Here are all the affordable housing. This is city land. Come help us build. Now, the road towards that, having the roadmap really can determine the path. Some people like to drive electric cars. Others like to ride bicycles. Others like to have scooters. There are many ways to get there. And I could say to them, my supporters that said, okay, you and I are biking, but some people like to have an SUV. Others might want to take public transit. As long as the path, as long as our goal is clear, that if we want a more caring city, more affordable city, really good transit, young people have some money left by the end of the month, that don't have to worry about going to food banks, that's what our goal is. And I'm a social democrat. Everybody knows that. I've been around for quite a while, as you mentioned. They've seen me work through the years, whether it's making sure kids have food in schools, free dental program for kids, all of those things that I've started. So, it's not just today that all of a sudden I do things. I've done things in the past. I haven't changed.
Trick question, since you raised the social
Trick
democrat.
question?
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
none of the other ones are trick questions, it's just this one.
This is a trick question.
So David Miller, longtime New Democrat, when he was mayor,
Yeah.
made a point of saying that he was not going to renew his NDP membership. And John Tory, I think, might have said the same thing about the Progressive Conservatives. Will you stay a New Democrat?
I am a New Democrat, going to be a New Democrat, might die a New Democrat.
Straight answer.
Hopefully not soon.
Straight answer. I want to turn to another issue that is pulling people apart despite your optimism, and that is the Middle East. I said I didn't want to suck up all the oxygen in the room today, but you've had to walk a fine line on it. Online, in your statements, as Torontonians on both sides of the divide have been protesting the Hamas massacre, the Israeli retaliation, both of which have killed thousands of civilians. And 2 weeks ago, you posted a tweet, then you had to take it down. You posted another tweet, took it down, posted a third tweet to clarify, and you were getting it from all sides as a consequence. But you've also talked about there have been some incidents of restaurants being targeted because of their Jewish ownership, and you issued a statement, I think yesterday or the day before, about what happened on the weekend. So how do you keep Toronto and Torontonians together when emotions are so high when the Middle East is coming apart?
Fourth time, back to the Gans training. Sorry about that.
We're going to put him on an
I
overhead
know.
projector.
Marshall Gans, okay. The power of empathy. If we can grieve together all the civilians that have died and will die, hopefully stop dying. If we can grieve together, if we could understand the history on both sides, and if we could say that anger will always just lead to hate. Anger needs to be transformed into hope. If we have no hope, then we will be mired in anger and hate. But the first step is being empathetic. From there, we need to, after acknowledging the pain, then we have to find hope somewhere. Then we have a choice to make. What is that choice and what action we take? I've made lots of mistakes in my life. I realized that social media, using social media to express something with this much depth
Complexity.
and complexity is really hard. So the first tweet, the second tweet was connected to the first tweet, but some people just used the second one separately and just posted the second one without the first one. The first one got posted without the second one, and then it was all muddled. So I said I deleted both and put one out. And then it was still a bit muddled because it's too short. And then it just got into blah. About hate. I put a motion together on hate, on how we could, in this city where we all come together as a beacon of hope globally, where could we de-escalate and find hope and stop the hate? So we now have a motion that passed last week at City Council, supported by every members of council, Jewish members of council, Muslim members of council. We united it together to say, stop hate. And there's now a portal under toronto.ca called Stop Hate, one-stop shop on what resources you have if you experience hate, what resources you may have in order to prevent hate. How do we have more dialogue? Because I'm not a foreign affairs minister. I don't have any say about beyond the city, right? But at least the city, I could say, I've watched the Japanese internment, how Japanese Canadian was blamed during the Second World War of what happened, what Japanese government was doing.
And dual loyalties.
And dual loyalty, yeah. And that hate, I think, my goodness, Canadians, we could have opinions about government of every kind of government, but Canadians of that descent, hey,
Are not accountable.
are not accountable. Just like during COVID time, a lot of Chinese Canadians were going, "Well, you brought me," right? So it's really need to just have, I almost wanted to start with a moment of silence of commemorating the people dying today, but I'm not the chair.
I thought of it too.
Okay, but anyway, but I don't want to stop democracy from happening. So, so that piece is so important that we maintain that, because that's the Torontonians. Toronto have a unique place in this world. Which other country, which other city in this world do we have all these diverse people living in harmony.
But it
by
also,
and
but it
large.
also takes leadership, right?
It takes leadership. But in the summer, before all this tragedy happening, in the summer, I, as a new mayor, I went to every taste of everything everywhere. Taste of Danforth, taste of Little Italy, taste of Philippines, and taste of Kingsway, of Ukraine, Poland. My God, wow, Danforth, Greek. It was amazing. It was really community coming together. It doesn't matter if I'm not Greek, I'm going to go to Taste of Danforth anyway. So,
But I think you complained about Taste of Danforth as slowing you down the most with the selfies, not necessarily the food. Okay, you talked about trying to find common ground on council among your members on the Middle East. Tell me how you are finding common ground with your councillors on Toronto issues, because you've been, and still are, and will always be, a New Democrat, you've just clarified for us, and a partisan New Democrat on Parliament Hill, where it's a very different game, just like at the provincial legislature. At City Council, sort of, there's no parties. There's sort of an NDP party, but it's de facto not de jure. So how did you reach out to get cooperation, consultation with some of your opponents and with others who were always your critics? And I'm guessing part of it might have been from Mel Lastman, when the very conservative mayor, for those who don't remember him, who, when you were a councillor and you wanted to be in charge of the budget, or involved, I should say, in budgeting. So how does that lesson being applied today by you?
power is also about building relationships. And it's another Gans thing. But, okay, you guys are going to be sick of it. But building relationship is so important because everyone that run for office that become elected or not become elected are going in because they want to do something, change something. They have a passion to accomplish something to make their city, their neighborhood better, okay? At least that's why I hope they run.
We hope.
And yeah, so I went and took a lot of hours and hours over several weeks to find out each members of council, what they're passionate about, what do they want to accomplish in the next 3 years. How can I enable them to do that? How can I, so finding out what they really love to do, what they want to accomplish, how could I set what position they want, and then I built the team that way. So the deputy mayor for Scarborough, McKelvey, is Liberal, deputy mayor.
One of your deputy mayors supported your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of them. Mike Cole, also Liberal MPP in the past, supported my opponent. But it doesn't matter. That I know that Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey really want to have something done on the environment. So she chairs the environment, like the infrastructure environment team, right? And so each person have a passion, find a role for them, and we'll work together. So far, the motions that I've passed have been, quite a few of them are unanimous, with most of 80–90% of them have majority, more than majority vote.
Okay, I promised we would go to questions roughly at the halfway point. So we have mic runners, as I mentioned, who will, there's not a lineup. I'm going to pick you. But just a reminder, so I've asked all the easy questions. You're welcome to ask the tough questions, but not give speeches. So don't grab the mic. Our mic runners will in fact hold on to the microphone. Okay, I see somebody right over there.
Can I steal your pen and
You
write down the
sure can.
questions?
Yeah. In the second row, right over here. Yeah.
Hi. Do we have to introduce ourselves?
Oh, just give me your first name so I can respond to you.
Okay. Ermi. Very nice to speak to you, Olivia. I'm an editor of Move Smartly. This is a housing, media, and ideas news site. And question for you. What is the biggest thing you are afraid of failing to achieve so that your newly announced housing plan becomes just one more newly announced housing plan? What is the number one failure piece of it that you have to
What is the number one
piece that you have to get right? Otherwise, it will fail.
What a brilliant question. Oh my God. TMU rock. Wow. One question at a time, right? Okay. Number one, what a good question. I want to build a whole lot of affordable housing. I have all this land. I have people ready to build. I have people ready to move in. The key piece I need is back to the question of hope. I need other levels of government and other partners to believe that it is possible, that we could do it, because we haven't built for 25 years. And when things are status quo, that's been like that for quite a while, more than 2 decades, then it's easy to say, what, doing that? How is that possible? We used to, at the City of Toronto, build 32,000 units of housing ourselves. The city did the building, and then we stopped. The federal government stopped, provincial government stopped, municipal, every level of government stopped, starting from the feds in late 90s. I need people to actually imagine what is possible and say to other partners, come on, done it before, we can do it now. And yes, it looks like quite a bit of money, but it isn't. Because every time a homeless person ends up in the emergency ward, you know how expensive that is? Any time that a kid, because they have to keep moving from home to home to home and never be able to find friends because they have to move schools and become not a good student, or because they're going to school hungry, you know that losing that life potential, we're losing, if you want to talk about money, we're losing the taxes this person can pay. My pension is not going to get paid because the person is not going to have good education, right? So the financial impact, if you want to talk about money, is steep for us not to take action, is challenging, and having other levels of government to imagine, to say, yes, it's possible. The initial start is very hard because we haven't done it for all this time. But it's up to young people to say, wait a second, we have a housing crisis. How is it the other generation were able to do that? Because when I was around, when I was in St. Jamestown, in high school, people were building at that time. So even with one salary, my mom was a maid in a hotel. She was able to pay the rent and feed the kids. Didn't have no food bank at the time, no homelessness. Why is it that we have huge number of food banks and all these homeless people? It's a political decision. Let them tell you it isn't.
It's a big, ambitious program. I think $36 billion over 7 years.
Yeah, but it's only $1 billion from the federal and provincial government because the rest of it is financing.
It's a big ask from the federal and provincial governments.
Yes.
Good luck. But the question, I guess, the other side of the question is, what about...
$500 million is not a whole lot. You know how much are they spending on building the pipeline? I think it's, the last I saw it was like $30 billion it cost. It started with $5 billion.
Did you say that?
Went to $11 billion.
Did you say that to Sean Fraser,
no,
the federal
I would not
minister?
do that. It's not him that built the pipeline. But anyway.
He was a guest here last March, but we'll pass that on. But I think implicit in that question was, and which you mentioned, is homelessness and encampments. And your plan that you announced yesterday on housing, which you've just talked about, is impressive. But your plan on homelessness got bad reviews last week or earlier this month. And people think it's condemned to failure because there's not enough room, not enough shelter space. Now, I know your philosophy is to try to build out the housing, but it might be a long wait. So what can you do on homelessness and the unhoused?
That was not the homelessness plan. That was the winter plan.
Shelter plan.
It was the winter shelter plan. The homelessness, we now paid $800 million. And it used to be the provincial government pay 80%, we pay 20%. We're now paying half. You saw the number of refugees jump by 54% in 1 year. Okay, almost half of the people that are homeless are refugees. Okay, and they're being turned away. We literally don't have enough shelters to shelter everybody.
What will you do?
So what we're doing right now is we are opening more space. There's 250 space we opened up. We're looking to buy some buildings because renting hotels are really expensive. We had to do it during COVID because the number just completely jumped up. But in the long run, $200 a night is huge to rent hotel. But if we don't have any more shelters, where are we going to put people? So we rent these hotels. We have to go and find housing that then turn them into shelters. So we need partnership. And we need warming centers. We need a respite center 24/7. We are just inundated. We can't manage it. So we're hoping the federal government that, because refugees, right, and so are the provincial government, can give us a hand. We were able to get Premier Ford to put out 23 million, 7 million from us, of rent supplements so that we can rent a room for these homeless folks. So we have 2,000 people moving into those. And the federal government, since I came in, put in 97 million. That's good for half a year. We need another 97 million for the rest of the year. So I can go and throw a lot of numbers out, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a comprehensive plan on working with refugees, because right now, our shelter plan is for homeless. It's not for refugees.
Right.
We need a shelter plan for refugees. We need reception center. If not, they're going to show up at the airport, they disperse, we can't help them to apply for refugee status, they don't get a work permit, as a result, they're stuck in the shelter system, etc. It's just...
A vicious circle. All right, a work in progress. Questions? This person is got the hand up fast.
Hi, Olivia. Well, congratulations on your 100th day in office. You know, in Chinese, that's really ancestral celebration. So I hope that, you know, all the best with your career in the city, because as Martin said, he foresees a storm, and there's always, you know, a storm within politics. My name is Christian. I'm a TMU's first CIHR Vanier Scholar, and I'm also a person living with HIV, as well as a person who uses and injects drugs. So housing first is very important. And I'm just wondering, you know, beyond, you know, just the Band-Aid solutions by creating housing, how do you envision, you know, supporting communities to really, you know, as opposed to using centrist narratives that say, oh, I really appreciate, and Olivia, I know when you see success stories, they touch you, but I also, because I live with multiple intersectional identities, and having learned the lessons from the HIV response, that we don't necessarily want
I'm going to ask you for the question.
recovery.
Just keep it focused on the question.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
The question is, how can we make a comprehensive plan so to support the house, while you want to house people, but you're also employing people with living experiences who can actually, you know, build connections with.
Okay, I do empathize, but we have to share this. We have to share the time. So the question is, how do you have a comprehensive solution on these issues? Thanks.
Lived experience matter. Because the best road to a bad place is filled with good intention. And for us to do something for other people might make us feel good. That person may not need or want that. So, speaking about narrative, having people identified that have experienced that homelessness to say, this kind of housing is what matters to me. It needs to include my dog, okay? It needs to have some rules that are flexible. And it needs a whole bunch of other things. So the best way is actually hear and give the power to the people that have the lived experience and to provide comprehensive programming. Because right now a lot of services are fragmented. Mental health here, drug treatment here, housing here, education, jobs. No, you need to integrate it depending on what that person wants or need, because what they need changes. Because it's a journey of recovery, of healing, of stabilization, all of that stuff. So what we need is actually hear, listen, support, do the comprehensive housing, where they have a sense of control. So I came from a cooperative movement that if the people living there feel they have control over their homes, then the housing is going to be so much more successful. So last Saturday, I did a session to open up almost with the same number of people in front of us, with people that provide co-op housing and land trusts. And what we are trying to do is to provide land from the city, to support them, find money to help buy some of the old buildings so that we can turn them into affordable housing cooperative or land trusts. That's a win-win situation.
Okay, questions? Right over here. I see a very fast hand. Can we get a mic? There, it's coming right over here. Yeah. That was a neat trick to try to get the mic from the runner. Stay in your seat.
Thank you. My name is Mohajire. Congratulations first. I was just wondering, do you have any relationship with the federal government? And if not, or if so, do you have any plan to have a solid relationship with the Doug Ford government? Because you need it to have a strategies to build Toronto better. Thank you.
Relationship to the federal government.
And the Ford government, yeah.
Yeah, Ford government I talked about quite a bit. I am meeting with the provincial ministers and federal government.
Which ministers are you meeting with? Trying to get some clues
in the federal, yesterday I met with both online, so on Zoom. I've met with Minister Miller, which is immigration, and Minister Sean Fraser, which is housing and infrastructure. Okay, so that's the federal and the finance minister face to face. So I went up to Ottawa and met with them, and then some came to Toronto and we met again. Yesterday was because we are always stronger together. So yesterday was the big city mayor caucus across Canada. Whether it's Halifax, Vancouver, Ottawa, you name it, they were all there, Saskatoon. We had a session with those two ministers. Yes, we are, and I also met with the Prime Minister when I first became elected. So yes, we continue to build relationships, but not just one party. I've met with other parties, okay, both the Conservative and the NDP. In terms of the provincial government, still the same thing, right?
Which ministers are you meeting provincially?
I plan to, and I have conversation with Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure, and because she controls a lot of money. Yep. Minister of Housing,
okay.
And Minister Finance Minister, where the money lands, right? Those are the top four.
So we're trying to figure out what your
and
strategy is.
long-term care would be great too, because we run some long-term care homes.
How was your meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who sent you a rather stern letter
That was before I met with her.
putting you in your place and
Yes.
telling you how much money Ottawa does send you and for which you should be grateful?
That's the past.
Okay?
All the money that came to the city was in the past.
Right.
We need to build something new, something more hopeful.
How did you change the tone with the Deputy Prime Minister?
Well, she rode her bike, and because we're both cyclists.
You found common ground.
Yep, and we're both, not very tall. I'm vertically challenged. So there are lots to talk about. She lives in the same neighborhood that I live further south. She lives further north.
She took her bicycle to the Toronto Star newsroom as well when she came.
Well, there you go. There you go. There you go. Right? So
Do you remember when Jagmeet
lives
Singh,
in the
in fact, I
city.
told you this
On
last
the
month,
bike?
when Jagmeet Singh and Doug Ford, Jagmeet Singh showed Doug Ford how he rides his bicycle, and that's how they became friends.
Oh, whoa. Okay. I didn't know bicycle can do that. All right.
Okay, questions? Yes. Right over here, the person who was recording you secretly with her cell phone.
No, she wasn't.
Yes, right here, with the UBC, the inappropriate UBC
Okay,
sweatshirt.
thank you. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, Oliver, my question is very short and easy. So among all of your strategies, you mentioned about the homeless and the TTC issues. So which one you can sacrifice the most and why?
Sacrifice?
So you mean to choose which is the one that has to be set aside?
Yeah, thanks for, yes.
I don't
So
want
you're
to
she's
set
asking you
aside
to triage.
anything.
Well, people say if you have,
Oh, you
if you have
know-
only if everything's a priority, then you don't have priority.
No, my top priority is housing and TTC, right? It's, those are important, but they're all connected to each other, you know? If we don't have good mental health services, we're not going to be able to build good supportive housing. Then people won't be able to stay in their home for a long time if they have multiple challenges. So they are all connected. I don't know what I would sacrifice. We do so many things. You need clean water, you need your garbage picked up, you need police. When you call 911, you want police, fire, ambulance, whatever you need to show up.
But to govern is to choose, and we do need police, but some people say we don't need to spend as much money on the police. I'm not saying defund the police, which people don't talk about anymore, but do you think the police budget should be increased significantly or not?
Now, we have a $1.5 billion deficit. Did you hear me that? Like $1.5 billion. Okay, so I have to find some saving somewhere. I don't know precisely where yet. So what I'm saying, and we're about to kickstart the budget process. Oh, folks, okay, here's an invitation. I need you to join us coming first week of November, like starting November 1st. We're going to launch the budget. In the past, the budget is being done inside City Hall, right? You never see it until it shows up in January, and you're given 5 minutes to speak to some executive committee or budget committee, and that's it, you're gone, all right? Instead, I'm turning that around. I'm opening it up to say, I need you to tell me what's most important service that you want to increase or decrease, all right? So starting on November 1st, we're going to launch the budget. There'll be online forms. We have meetings in the third, fourth week of November. You're going to be invited to it, where you're going to say, yeah, we need more of this, less of that. So we're going to take all your opinions together. And in December, the budget committees are going to work on it, say, okay, we need to cut some here and increase some of it here, da, 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 da. And then in January, we're going to ask you, the budget committee is going to present something, and then you will get a chance to come to City Hall and say, well, that's not what I meant about TTC. This is what we need. Okay? So the budget committee is going to report out. Then on February 1st, me, your mayor, under the power given to me by the premier, strong mayor power, I have to put a budget out on February 1st. But guess what? When I'm presenting it, it's already gone through you looking at it, it's gone through the budget committee, you will have already a chance to speak. I will be listening, so I will be able to tell you that answer on February 1st when I present, next year, when I present the budget. Okay? It's a bit of a longer answer, but democracy can be a bit messy. And you cannot have a good budget, a good city where people feel they belong without you having some say about what service you want most, what service you want less of.
People power. She wants you to answer your own question. What's your problem?
Yep.
Okay. We have a question right over there. Yes, you. I see a clipboard, so it has to be a short question.
Okay. Hi. So, when protesters for Palestine demonstrated in front of City Hall, you decried them for being pro-Hamas. This was false. They were demonstrating.
It has to be a question, okay?
Yeah, he's
I know.
coming.
I'm
One
getting
more.
to it.
Okay.
This was false. They were demonstrating in support of Palestinian civilians under attack by Israel. 2 days ago, you put out a statement condemning protesters for targeting Cafe Landwehr for being Jewish. This was false. Cafe Landwehr was
Okay,
targeted by calls for a
I'm going to
boycott.
interrupt. This is your
because
last
the co-founder-
request. I don't need your opinion. Just ask the question. Don't say
Okay, so
don't
my
say she
question
was
to you
false.
is, what do you have to say to the protesters who you have repeatedly misrepresented in your public statements?
Thank you.
You have every right to protest. Freedom of speech is top. So if you want to lament or protest what's happening in Gaza, go for it. That poster that said all out for Palestine, underneath it, I read the wording. And I invite you to do the same. The wording that is on Instagram that asked people to come out, the wording said that the people kidnapped, the 50 people kidnapped, it was justified. It celebrates the kidnaps. I'm sorry. When civilians, children, women are kidnapped, I will not stand by and say that that's worthy of celebration. So all power to Palestine in terms of the demonstration. You have the freedom of speech to say whatever you want, wherever you want. Absolutely. But if it becomes hateful, and if you pick on a restaurant because the owner is Jewish, if the owner is Chinese, if you pick on it because you don't like the Chinese government doing something, that hurts too. Right? So for me, it is not violating freedom of speech. You can say boycott in whatever you want, but say it wherever. But if you are going after a person or a restaurant because of what nationality they are, they're Canadians, they live in Toronto.
Okay.
So that is
please
why
interrupt.
I had trouble. Now, I supported the anti-apartheid boycott. Okay, I'm that old.
South Africa, you mean?
In South Africa, yes. In South Africa, there was apartheid, and Nelson Mandela was in jail. And there were big companies that were investing in South Africa. Yes, I support a boycott of those companies. Why? Because they're investing and enabling. That's totally different than picking a restaurant just because I imagine the Chinese restaurant, they were being targeted during the COVID, and during the SARS time they were targeted. I said, oh.
I was in Hong Kong during SARS, based there for the Star. And when you and I talked last month, we talked briefly about the tragic loss of democracy in Hong Kong. And since we just had an international question and we're almost out of time, we'll go into a bit of overtime, unless you don't want to talk about Hong Kong democracy.
I do.
I thought you might.
Some of my friends are in jail.
Talk to me about, we take democracy for granted in Canada, and now it's just about gone, or the hope of democracy and democratization in Hong Kong is gone. What is it like for you to watch from here?
It's heartbreaking. I was in Hong Kong teaching Marshall Gann's materials to some of the people that want democracy, a right to vote, a right to determine their future government. And those are some of the people that ran for office, and because they ran for office and through a primary system, they're in jail. Some people are in jail because they were speaking out, that journalists are in jail. Mm-hmm. Owner of Apple.
Publisher of Apple Daily.
Apple Daily, Jimmy Lai is in jail. Professor of law, Benny Tai is in jail. My friend that actually spoke to a TMU Institute for Change Leader event, who is a union leader, is in jail and couldn't even come out briefly because his mother passed away to do the mourning. And it's heartbreaking. What can we do in Toronto? We could welcome some of the people that are now in Canada from Hong Kong. And some of them are students, some of them are professors, they are from all walks of life. And hope that you can keep that democratic spirit still alive, and that they could, in time of darkness, to still feel there's hope in the future of Hong Kong.
We can also cherish democracy here, right?
Absolutely.
And I always say that a vote is a terrible thing to waste. And when you think about even your own election, not to diminish your triumph, but the turnout was about 38.5%. So 2 out of 3 Torontonians did not exercise their democratic right. We're out of time. However, if you want, it's up to you and your team, and Devin, your tour director. If you want to talk to people who are no longer able to take your class and tell them what they need to know and how you can model.
Can I stand up?
Democracy. You can have a pointer if you want. You have my pen. You can have a pointer.
No.
But any words, since that was a gloomy note just a moment ago.
I know.
Any words of inspiration about entering politics?
Okay, may I stand up? I'm getting energetic. Okay. Hi, I can see you now at the back because I'm short. Let me tell you what I used to teach, and okay, I cannot promote other people. Okay, but I can promote, so learning how to, you don't even need to learn. If you have a passion to make a difference, to get engaged, and I see people that have passions that want to be engaged, to say that our city government needs me, provincial, federal government needs me, my university needs me, Dyers needs me, right? The folks here. My student union needs me. I urge you to get involved, but sometimes organizing has skills. How do you tell your stories? How do you use the story to motivate volunteers? How do you work as volunteers so your organization grow? Because how many of us have organizations that in the beginning lots of volunteers and then it gets smaller. How do you keep growing your team, your organization? How do you participate politically and be effective so that the government hear you? The people in power hear you, and not just hear you, not just say they hear you, actually do what you want them to do. Those are skills you could learn. And this is a really good place to learn it, from TMU or an other venue, so that I can't teach that anymore because I am supposed to be the mayor and not teach. So I'm not allowed to promote that, but I just want to urge you to, because it's lifelong learning. Had I not, after failure, in 2014, came to TMU and learned a whole lot with a lot of people supporting me, and learn from a whole lot of students, and be able to teach. And best way to learn is to teach too. And through the teaching, I learned to hear your stories, student stories, the struggle you have. And it's the best way to learn that. I took all that lessons and ran for election and got elected. So all power to TMU and all of you for teaching me and enabling me to learn.
Okay, that's all the time we have. We went into overtime. I want to thank the mayor and her team for being so forgiving of us. Here is the list of questions that I promised. Lots of homework. It's page after page.
Does it have email address attached to it?
We'll try.
Then how do I
we'll be watching
respond?
you. We'll be watching you as mayor. You can respond as mayor by doing what they ask. I'm now going to hand it over to Kareem Bardisi, who is already in position and who runs the dais for a formal thanks. First, I'm going to cheat and say thank you and thank you. Merci, Megwech, Sheshe, Ngoy, and over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you to President and Vice Chancellor Mohamed Lashemi, to the Provost Roberta Inachito Provenzano, to the DAIS team, those wearing the lanyards who helped put on this event, as well as TMU Events and Security, to Martin Redcon, our DAIS Senior Fellow, and Mayor Chow. Thank you so much. Mayor Chow's course is not being taught right now, but SSH 505, Making the Future, is being taught, and some of my students are here, and we'll gather afterwards to debrief this event. It's being also offered in the winter, Faculty of Arts and Chang School, SSH 505, Mondays, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Just have to get that plug in. For future TMU Democracy Forum events and DAIS events, check out dais.ca/democracyforum. Thanks to all of you who participated in person and online for making a better democracy through this event. Thanks again to Martin and the mayor, and please enjoy some time together afterwards.